take a look at this number. Now, I don't know you, but if I had to guess, you looked at a specific spot first. You looked at the right side and you said to yourself, what's the point of that digit? Welcome to a collection of untold stories, episode 3. This is 1,000,001, is the episode title. First off, I really appreciate everyone's support on the last video. Truth be told, the first episode we put out, it was probably at like 14 views after 48 hours, which it's a brand new YouTube, so not that unheard of. But the second video, we were at about 400 views after like 3 hours, so really awesome stuff. There's no Patreon yet. I'm planning to do some other series on Patreon that'll obviously be like uncut and really interesting ones just like these. But until then, if you're wanting to support, honestly, just subscribe if you like my stuff. Leave a like and drop a comment below. Really, kind of today, we're talking about collection styles. So if you want to drop a comment on kind of the way you collect, if you're a player collector, super collector, if you're flipping, or really more of an investment guy, long-term, short-term, just let us know. It's kind of cool to see the community that's growing on this page pretty rapidly. So with that, if you also have any questions, drop them below. We'll get to those probably every week. Haven't really asked for them yet until now, so feel free, lines open. So I'll be honest with you guys, I kind of alluded to it on Instagram, but the first episode of this episode 3 I recorded, it's in the trash. It's in the landfill. I didn't feel great about it. And I love to feel great about these before I post them. And really, it comes down to, I like putting out intelligent and well thought out stuff for you guys to listen to. Because, you guys have a lot going on throughout your days, and this is your hobby. This is very important to everybody here. And so really, if I have something that, even like last night, I threw together 4 hours of my time putting that video together, and I just hated it. I did not like it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to scrap this thing and we're going to redo this because everybody deserves better. I deserve better. I deserve to like what I'm putting out there, and a little more extra time isn't going to hurt. So this is what I put together instead. So the term 1,000,001, it's kind of a collector term that I did not coin. I ripped this from a song that I really like by a band called Royal Blood. And I took this as basically as they said in their verses. 1,000,001 being, you have 1,000,000 of something and you're still going to want one more. And that's why 1,000,001 is a number. That's why it counts. That's why the 1 on the end of it counts. And so it's kind of the same thing I think about when I collect. And it was the same ideal for me for a long time, in that the old adage is that the life cycle of a PC card, right? You chase the card, you pay for the card, you get the card, you enjoy it, you put it in your PC box where it goes to die. And that's kind of how it happens, right? And sometimes you have displays and stuff, but same difference, right? It's going to go there and it's going to sit. And really that's what collecting is all about. It's about the next move. It's kind of like Tom Brady said, what's your favorite ring, they asked him, and he goes, the next one. And that's really what it boils down to for most people in collecting and life in general. You can apply that to many different facets of life. The car you have, the house you have, anything like that, there's always going to be something you're going to chase extra. And so that's why it's really important to me when I think of, where the market's at right now and all the new collectors and the collectors who are getting back into things. There's so many different ways to collect, and really realizing that you're never going to be fully fulfilled unless you set goals for yourself, it kind of scares me a little bit for people entering the hobby or people who are currently in it and kind of moving at a pace where maybe they don't know where they're going, or they have an idea but they just haven't thought it out very well. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, this is just a guy talking on a screen, but in my experience, I learned far too late what my actual goal was in collecting. And it was the video last week. It was the Superfractor Auto of Tim Lincecum. And, I got caught up in FOMO way more than I wanted. When I'm putting together a super collection of a player, you have so much love for the player and you have so much love for the cards and the hobby that it's hard to say no to things. And it's hard to kind of stay tried and true to honor your goals or honor your budget. Young or old, it depends. Everybody's got a budget of some sort. So really what you're working with, it's hard to honor that at all times because there's really cool stuff out there. And there's stuff you want to put in your life and put in your collection that, you're worried sometimes you can't get another shot at it, or, it's going to go up in price, it'll cost you more later on, or any number of reasons. But I honestly think that I wasted quite a bit of money and time, especially time, in buying cards that really subtracted from my overall goal. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. As someone that's climbed the mountaintop, right now I have Tim Lincecum's 5 best baseball cards, best one-of-one cards. When I have those cards, and listen, I had his top 10, and if it's any evidence enough, I sold the back half of the top 10 because what it boiled down to was when I thought of my collection and what I enjoyed the most about it, it was that I had reached my goals. And there was nothing better. There was no, the old adage, chasing the dragon, right? Well, I caught the dragon. It's not, there's nothing real. When I got that super auto in the mail, there was never going to be a mail day ever that was going to trump that. It was just not going to happen. And even at that point, I remember after I got that card, my dad messaged me and he was like, "Are you done now? Is this it? Is that all she wrote?" And I said, "Oh, maybe." And it's like, no. And it wasn't. And it took me quite some time to kind of gather that nothing was ever going to beat that. And, there's some cards I have now, like I said, as top 5. There's kind of a set, there's just 3 rookie superfractors. The way I kind of narrowed it down is I kind of want to enjoy, the tip top of each thing, right? I have his best Logo Man auto. I have his 3 best rookie supers. They're a set together. I have his best RPA, his only RPA one-of-one. And right now, that's really the 5 cards I have of him. And for right now, I'm very, very pleased with that. I don't foresee myself ever selling any of these cards. Is there other stuff that I'd like to get to make it a more complete collection? And do I have blueprints of what would make me feel good to get from here? Yes, but it's just not a huge... There's no urgency behind it. It could happen at any time. It doesn't really matter to me. And if there's a one-of-one card that I really want and it becomes available, it's not the end of the world, if I miss out on it. There was one where it's the end of the world if I miss out on it. And I was lucky enough to make some moves to make it happen to where I don't got to worry about it going anywhere ever again. Really the lesson in all of that rant is that if I look back at my time collecting and, the $10 here on like a relic or patch card and the $14 there on like a nice refractor, numbered to 25, numbered to 50, that stuff really kind of drew away from my ultimate goal. Now, it was a nice little short, instant gratification, it really was. But all in all, as someone who, grew up in high school working at a sub shop and making minimum wage there, and then in college I made $10 an hour as a maintenance guy. When I was in those positions where there wasn't much income on my radar, it would have been nice to have not made those purchases, and I would have had more money to go after bigger things. And, often those bigger things, they're going to have the most movement in, the influx of value, because they're so rare. The bigger cards, the more pricier cards are so rare. Those are going to have a lot of movement, especially with a player like Lincecum. So looking back, I wish I would have gotten more of those. Even if it wasn't my bigger overall goal, it would have given me more solid bargaining chips to work with on other deals, and it could have given me a lot of profit. Now, don't get me wrong, all of the $10 to $14, $25, $50 cards that I bought, they weren't all a loss, okay? And a lot of those I actually did make money on. But it was the effort and the urgency that I had to spend when I was selling those to get money back that I already would have had. That's the problem. The extra stress of, trying to get someone to give you time to pay for a card or work a deal with you, half trade, half cards, or all that kind of stuff. It's just added stress to all of it. So, looking back, I wish I would have saved more money and went after bigger things that I did the research I knew could pop off at any time. And they had a, bigger lion's share of sought afterness, if that's a word. An example I want to use, I know my dad's been enjoying this series. I don't know if he enjoyed me turning down $100,000 for a baseball card, but he's been watching the series and he collects cards. And, I've talked to him multiple times about it, and he's come out good on this. He collects T206 vintage cards. And, something that I've always told him is that, hey, if you ever need help, I can work with you and we could sell, some of the back half of your collection, maybe the low to mid-end portion of it, and, we could finish out some of your other goals. Because really, in general, my dad wants to complete, the Ty Cobb T206 set. I think he's just missing the green portrait and the bat off shoulder. And he could easily accomplish both of those cards if he liquidates, the back half to mid half of his collection. Now, he doesn't have to do that. He can just go buy it, but it's the principle of it. He's not a huge spender when it comes to those things, and, this kind of would help. I think he's entertained the thought. Listen, he would do really good. A lot of his T206 cards have really shot up in value. He did the right thing and collected mostly graded when he was investing in all of these. So the condition isn't, here or there. It's, it is what it is. And so they're already slabbed. They're ready to ship. Like he did very well with it. And so if that's ever something he's wanting to do, that's what I prescribe. And again, looking back at the 5 cards I mentioned that I kept, the reason I made that decision to thin out so much, in the first episode I mentioned I had 54 of his top 88 cards. The reason it was easier to thin out was because I collected so many cards. I touched so many. And I witnessed, myself enjoying lots of different cards. And the thing I can tell you that rang true and was very obvious, probably 12 years into collecting, was that the Super Auto was everything. His best cards were everything. When I would think about my collection, say I was at work or driving or something like that, when I would think about my collection, that was the first thing I would think about, and really the only thing I would think about. And yes, it's nice to open up the collection box every now and then and just fan through just a plethora of cards. There's not a whole lot of things that hit better, but in my opinion, the thing that does hit better is having something that can't be beat. There's no more expectations of you to improve because you cannot. It's done. And you also feel, a rush of completion that you did it. There's different levels to it, and we all collect different things. My experience is, collecting a player that was extremely sought after and had a very big market for his cards, because you look at it and most of his cards were printed from 2007 to 2013, which is, you know, the actual era of scarcity when we're talking about modern cards. Nowadays, they're printing 27 different types of one-of-ones. And, nowadays, instead of having a number to 5 red refractor that's true red, you have a red refractor, you have a red lava, you have a red Dr. Pepper. It's like you have all these different, types of parallels and refractors, and it's just so watered down now. But in that era that Lincecum was, prevalent in card products, they were actually really scarce. They were true one-of-ones. They were actual chases. And, that's definitely not a slight at Topps or whoever owns cards that are ultra modern, 2020 and present. It's not a dig at anybody, because that's what the market calls for. So many more people are entering this hobby now, where you have to print more cards. You have to have more opportunities for everybody to enjoy the hobby. So that's not a bad thing. But for me, it is a bad thing, because, the player I collected, his stuff is more scarce and it's going to cost more money. So someone, take for instance, who collects, someone nowadays, they collect someone who's not really the same notoriety as Lincecum. It might be easier to go after legitimately everything. And also, something gleamingly obvious is someone who has tons of money and you can go after literally everything. It's going to be different. But for me, I'm trying to hit on things where, I'm sharing my experience, and if anyone, has a similar, life they live, or a similar, income or budget or anything like that, this is what I found at the top of the mountain. That's basically what I'm trying to get at. Which, spending is another thing, and it's something I ran into a lot. Now, for me, growing up and into college, I didn't spend a whole lot of money in one transaction. It's the old thing, don't spend it all in one place. Well, sometimes you know enough about the place where you can spend it all in one place. And it goes back to what we were talking about, not having so many microtransactions that are going to add up. Buying those $10 to $15 cards here and there, and buying $50 cards, it's all going to add up. And I think one of the more interesting things is just people's perspectives on things. Take, for instance, your bank. When it sends you a statement, it's a monthly statement, okay? There's a reason for that. When you're looking at your performance as a human being and how you spend money and your habits, it's good to look at it, through a trend. And trends are usually predicted or analyzed through months. Well, you can look at your expenditure on your hobbies, your groceries, your gas, all that kind of stuff, through a monthly basis. People are very comfortable spending $5 to $10, okay? And, it's kind of like nothing. It's kind of like candy, because it's a very small number, okay? But then people will go spend $5 to $10, 100 times in a month, and it's like $500 or $1,000. So in all actuality, you're spending $1,000. It's a bigger number than you think. Same kind of goes with collecting. And I've known people, and I know myself, and I've talked myself out of things sometimes where, I'm like, I don't want to spend $1,000 on this. That's a lot of money. I'll have a card that I want to get that's $1,000, and I'll be like, I can't be spending $1,000, but then, I look at my month and I'll spend $200 5 times on cards. Like, it's the exact same thing. Now, you have to be able to limit yourself, but buying high end, it's scary for some, especially if you're just doing it as an investment. But if you're buying, for your PC, and again, I'm just someone who recommends high end and more rare cards than ever, because they're harder to get. It's a cooler thing to get, in my opinion, and it's more worth your time and it's more worth your money, because the rarer a card is, it's going to be harder to lose money on it. And so, but in the same breath, when you're spending all of this money, you're going to spend it anyway. So knowing, what to spend it on is, obviously the most important part. When you start collecting someone new or something new, you're bound to make mistakes. And obviously mistakes are kind of subjective. But the best thing you can do is research, and that's just going to ring true in most things you do in life. I see a lot of people who, kind of collect all over the board. And to preface, when you collect things and you enjoy this hobby, it needs to be that. If you're not really interested in like doing all that extra work to make sure, your money goes to the right place, you're progressing your collection in a nice, efficient way. If you're just doing this, every now and then to have some fun, get whatever, that's completely fine. Like it's really not, something I'm against at all. But if you're a competitive person and you want to get the most out of your dollar, the best thing I can recommend is knowing exactly what you want. And that comes, naturally. That doesn't come, stressing yourself out and trying to make a plan. Most people will know exactly what they want if they pay attention to their habits, their spending, and really the way things make them feel. How does a card make you feel? How does a player make you feel? How does your team make you feel? Obviously, the Giants this season have made me feel just remarkably bad, but it's an intrinsic value that everybody has. You're going to get really excited, and the people around you are going to be excited, especially with such a big boom in this industry. But you have to understand that quick moves rarely are good moves. The well thought out and calculated moves that you make for your collection are usually going to bear the most fruit. And so, going to card shows, going to local card shops, diving into websites, into forums, into checklists of teams and players, and taking notes. These are all things that are going to lead to. These are all things that are nerdy, but they're all going to lead to you succeeding in accomplishing your goals in the hobby. I used to spend countless hours making spreadsheets. I would go on to multiple websites and extract information out of them. This was before AI, which I'm sure AI could help you with a lot of this stuff. But I would extract so much information out of these websites on Lincecum cards, and I would make sure that I was on the forums looking at who collects them, who has what, where it's at, how liquid is it, or how obtainable is it. And I would keep all these things down, and I would have a map of all of the U.S., of all of the world, where these cards are, how likely they are to move. When were they from? What set are they from? How many of them exist? Lincecum has like 24 superfractors, which is a very low number. He has, I think, 16 different Logo Man cards, another very low number. Understanding these stats is going to help you in the long run because you're going to know what's more rare and what you're going to have less opportunities at. So it's extremely important to know the numbers. It's one of the first things you should do. If you're really into a player, you really want to super collect them, or a team and whatnot, you need to know these numbers, and you need to do some research. You got to put some time into it because it's not going to just come randomly. Key point, it's not going to happen overnight. A lot of the time you're not going to become the collector that you've always dreamed of overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take reps. It's going to take a lot of studying, and that's all I can recommend is that. A lot of my favorite feedback from this series so far is in regards to the fact that I'm not really focusing on the values of these cards. I mention them sometimes just to, show how serious it is, but it's not so much about me making money, first off. It's always been about the cards, and so most people who have reached out, it's really nice to see something where someone's focused on the cards, they're focused on the player they love, and they're focused on the hobby they love, not just making money from it or the shiny stuff in it. It's different for me, and it's different for a lot of people. And so, that's why I've been able to enjoy it as much as I have, is because it's about the hobby. It's not about the money. And I think really avoiding greed as much as you can and keeping even keel about all situations is just something that's worked for me. It might not work for everybody, but it's worked for me. You're going to lose in this hobby sometimes. It's just going to happen, regardless of what your goal is. And when that does happen, you just need to build your network. You need to keep civil with people. It's I know it's why we don't have nice things, right? It's people don't always keep things civil, but we all have greed. It's just how you control it. And it's how you let your persona and your vibes affect other people. For me, when I would lose cards to people that were, competing against me, it was never something where I would let my emotions get the best of me, or, my greed or my envy get the best of me. I would always congratulate people. I kept things professional because, first off, it's just cardboard. Like, let's call it what it is. It is a hobby. It's not worth ruining relationships over. And second off, they have something that's important to you. It's important to both of you. People that, connect on these things where they have the same passions, you guys should get along. And you guys should go get a beer sometime if you're of age, and you guys should have fun, and it shouldn't be something where you're, at each other's throats. And third off, probably one of the most important bullet points here is that they have the cards you want. If they ever sell it, or if they're ever, thinking about selling it or want to trade it, you are your own person. You're the face of you. You want to be able to make a good impression on someone so they, think of you when they sell it. Maybe you'll get a good deal out of it. Who knows? But it's always good to keep your options open. And that's, not the most important thing out of all those bullet points, but it is important. If there's a final message that I have for this video, it's that, it should be very important to you to have this hobby make you happy. And it's not a very hard thing to accomplish, because it is really one of the best hobbies there is. Topps is doing an awesome job at differentiating these days. They're far more polished marketing-wise. And, Fanatics is in the game now where, they're bringing more game-used items to us. And, they're really emptying the bag on trying to be different and trying to give us more things to enjoy. So it's a good time to be a collector. Over this series, I'm going to talk about how to protect yourself at all times, because albeit, the market and the population of collectors is getting so much larger, the bad apples come in with that, which, if you want specifics, there's the reason. I think episode 5 is named The Orchard. We're going to talk about bad apples in that episode and what to look out for. But rest assured, you're in a good time to be collecting. There's a lot more pressure on people now, and it's more stressful now. But there's so much more for people out there than there was when I was collecting. And I'll tell you right now, not very many people liked me in that era. 2010 to 2020, it was something where I was hogging all of the good cards. Now there's kind of insurance on that, where they're making so many that there's not really one person that can do that. So it's a good climate to be collecting cards right now. This has been a collection of Untold Stories, episode 3. I hope you enjoyed. We have episode 4 next week. I'm very excited about. It'll be another jaw dropper. This episode was more so something where I'm wanting to share knowledge and I'm wanting to, talk about current events going on and current strategies that people use in collecting. The next episode is going to be more of a storytelling aspect again, where we're gonna get into a good one, and I'm licking my chops, ready to tell that story.